Well, can you believe that summer is basically over? I know, right? It is a reality I think we all just need to grasp, and maybe we need to have a little moment of silence in order to commemorate it. But, man, this summer's flew by. I don't know if it was that way for you. It sure was for us. But the reality is that school starts this week. Junior high, high schools, elementary schools through Cheyenne are starting up on Tuesday, I think. So, summer is over. And so as school is starting this week, I thought it would be good if we could just take our time this morning and talk about kids and talk about families and talk about parenting a little bit. And here's the thing, and I recognize this, that there are maybe a couple people in this room who are beyond the parenting stage. Is that a fair assessment? Except for Mike. Mike is still there, in need of a parent. No. I know that phase for many of us has kind of passed, and so if your kids are grown, or if you have grandkids, or if you hang out with kids at all, I want to speak to that a little bit this morning. But if you find yourself in the place to where you don't have kids at home, where grandkids maybe are moved away or whatever, and you're not really around kids this morning, I'm just going to ask, as we talk about family, as we talk about parenting, as we talk about raising kids, I'm just going to ask that you pray. And as you listen to these things, consider these things, but pray. Pray for your spouse. Pray for your kids, your grandkids. Pray for the kids that are going back to school this week. Pray for the kids that come here every Sunday during second service and have a conversation about Jesus. Pray for other people in this church. Hey, if nothing else, you can pray for me and my kids. Why are you laughing already? I haven't even told stories yet. And you can pray for us as parents. And, hey, maybe you can thank God that through the process of parenting, your parents didn't kill you. Right? So we're going to talk about family. We're going to talk about parenting a little bit this morning. Hey, I know many of you have seen my family, but I want to show them again. This is us. This was taken last October or something like that. So they don't really look like that anymore, but no, they do. This is my family. Kimmy and I have been married for 10 years, 4 kids, and we are done. No more. Hannah, so from the left, Hannah, McKenna, Evan, and Brecken. And here's the thing. If you have been around my family and you've been around my kids, you know that this is not reality. And rather, this next picture is a little bit closer to reality. Where's that? Oh, there it is. That's a little bit closer. Evan, you see there on the right, just kind of, or on your left, just kind of is off in his own world. Brecken has that smile like he's hiding something. McKenna is upset because the whole world's not focused on her. And there's Hannah, just keeping it all together, holding everything together. I tell you what, we love our kids, and you know, if I can share just a little bit about each one of them. So Hannah, we'll start with the oldest. Hannah is 7. This last week, she had work done on her teeth. She had a couple cavities, and she does not like new things. And so when we went to the dentist a few months ago to get a cavity fixed, she just would not let anybody touch her. Like that wasn't going to happen. And so we had to go in and have her put under medicine in order to go to sleep for a little bit. But through that whole process, man, she was a trooper getting through that whole process. Brecken, there in the gray shirt, is 5. He was up at Rendezvous with us and loves it when everybody just focuses on him. Like, that's just his world right there. He went on walks, and he shot guns, and went fishing, and just had a blast, and he cried on the way home because we were leaving. Evan in the red shirt, he is just kind of in his own world, and here's the deal. He's 3 now. Evan did not really talk much, and we kept saying, man, when is he going to start talking? We wish he would start talking. And now he won't shut up. And then there is McKenna with her curly hair. She is 1.5 right now, and speaking of talking, her favorite word or sound is like, Like you say, hey, McKenna, bring us your shoes. Or, McKenna, will you eat your dinner? Uh-uh. And then she goes on to eat it. The reality is with parenting and with raising kids is that there are times where it is really, really such a blessing, and there are times where it is really, really difficult. And the humorist Irma Bombeck once said it this way. She said, "We should have known that parenting was going to be hard because it starts with the word labor." And I think that is a reality that many of us can grasp. Parenting is just hard. Raising kids is just hard. And sometimes you think that you're not going to make it. And we can all just be honest here, sometimes you think that your kids aren't going to make it sometimes because parenting is just hard. Mark Twain once said this. He said, "When a child turns 13, go out, put him in a barrel with a hole in it so you can feed him through the hole, and then when he turns 18, plug the hole." Can't make this stuff up, people. The goal, I pray that the goal for me and my family, I pray the goal for every family, for parents, for grandparents involved with kids, no matter where you land on this, I think the goal is for us to help kids move through the different phases that they come in contact with through life, move through these phases without putting them in a barrel and without plugging the hole in the barrel. And here's the thing, that God understands the difficulty of parenting. Like, this is not something new for him. It's not catching him off guard. He understands how difficult kids can be at times. He understands how rebellious kids can be at times. He understands what it is like to be hurt by kids. He understands what it's like to show them love without getting love in return. He understands all of these things because if you've read through the Old Testament, you know that God's people acted out. And you know that God's people rebelled. You know that God's people did not always return love when love was shown to them. And so this morning, we're going to look at just 4 keys to parenting, to raising kids, to parenting kids. And this is not exhaustive, I know. And many of you could talk about this much more than I could. But over the last 7 years of raising kids and talking to people and reading books and listening to people and whatnot, as we talk about parenting, these are kind of 4 things that for me in my parenting, this is some of the most important things that I've learned. And so 4 keys to parenting kids, if you will, with us this morning. The first one is this. We need to give kids identity. We need to give kids identity. Young people need to know who they are. They need to know who they are. One of the biggest struggles, I spent 6 years as a youth minister here. One of the biggest struggles in the junior high and high school age for kids is really knowing who they are, is them figuring out, who am I? This whole identity thing is a huge thing for them. Identity is hard, and so we try to find identity through the different associations that we have in our life. And so for many kids, it's, who my friends are, or, where I go. For my kids, it's where they go to church, or where they go to school, or what sports they play in, or whether or not they're a part of groups like art, or maybe they're into more technology, or they're into gaming, or something like that. Association comes through what they do and who they spend their time with. And so many times, this is where kids get their identity from, is who they associate with or where they go the most. But kids need to understand who they are. They need to understand their identity. Look at Exodus. We're going to look at a lot of passages of Scripture this morning. And so I invite you to try and keep up if you can. I'm going to call it out. You can follow along on the screen behind me. But look at Exodus chapter 6, verse 6 and 7. It says this, "Therefore tell the Israelites, I am Yahweh, and I will deliver you from the forced labor of the Egyptians and free you from slavery to them. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and great acts of judgment. I will take you as my people, and I will be your God. You will know that I am Yahweh your God, who delivered you from the forced labor of the Egyptians." God looks at his people here who are in slavery at this time, and he's saying, I am your God, and your identity is not found in where you're at. Your identity is not found in the fact that you're slaves to Egypt, to Pharaoh. Your identity is found in that I am your God and you are my people. Your identity is found in God. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9 and 10 says this, "But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his possession, so that you may proclaim the praises of the one who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. You had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy." Identity for us as people, no matter where we land on the age scale, no matter if we're a 5-year-old or a 50-year-old or an 80-year-old, identity is power for us as people. And so as we are interacting with kids and teenagers, how do we instill identity in them around us? How do we create a sense of identity for kids around us? Well, I'm going to mention 3 ways for us this morning. The first one is this. We need to state it. We need to state it. We need to say it. We need to speak it. We need to repeat it. We need to post it around. We need to state who our kids are. And here's the thing. And there's going to be a couple times here where I'm just going to get really real with you about where I'm at as a parent, okay? And this is one of the biggest struggles for me as a parent. One of my friends who pastors a church in Colorado, he keeps saying this over and over again. He talks about prophetic grace. He talks about prophetic grace, and that means to give people credit for who they are going to be, not who they currently are in reality. We need to give our kids prophetic grace. We need to give them credit for who they are going to be, not just for who they are right now in this moment. And this is tough. This is tough when you've got kids that don't necessarily do everything perfect all the time. We need to say it over and over of who they are. We need to say over and over, you are a child of God. You are a Snyder. You are a whoever. You are going to be fine. I believe in you. You can do this. We need to state it over and over again. The second thing, we need to tell them stories. Tell them stories about who they are. Tell them stories about your family, about your heritage. Tell them about your parents, about your grandparents, about your extended family. Talk to them about your family values, the things that are important to your family. Talk to them about your marriage. Talk to them about how you came to Christ and about what following Jesus has looked like for you. Talk to them. Tell them stories. The third thing is set standards. And we're going to talk about this again later on as well. But we need to be sure to give clear standards and expectations for behavior. And I do this with my son more than anybody else because more than any of my other kids, he needs it right now the most. A couple weeks ago when we were coming home from Florida and going to Florida, as a parent of 4 very active kids, TSA in an airport is a very stressful situation for me, right? So you stand in line for like 30 minutes, and then one by one you have to go through this security thing that, you hear all the horror stories about how, when people act out, they get taken to some back room and they just never come out or something like that. So as a parent, especially with Brecken, if you don't know who Brecken is, then that's all right. You probably don't need to. But if you know Brecken, you know that TSA is just stressful for me. And so what I've started to do that works really well for Brecken is as we're approaching TSA, before we get in the line, I get down at this level and I say, Brecken, we're going to go through this line and we're going to listen to the men and women who tell us what to do, and I need you to do exactly what they say. And I need you to not do anything else. I said, we're going to stand in line for a while, and then I need you to listen and do exactly what we tell you to do. And when you set standards and when you set expectations, I think more times than not we're going to be surprised about how well kids follow those expectations. And I can tell you that the 4 times we've traveled on an airplane one other time with our kids, the 4 times that we've gone through TSA, Brecken has never disappointed me because we have been able to set clear expectations for him and for our kids. We need to do this with our kids. We need to give clear expectations and standards for how we expect them to behave. One of the things that we talked to Brecken and Hannah about is lying. That's kind of a big thing right now for us. And one of the conversations that's kind of on repeat in our house is how we don't lie to each other. Like, this is not what Snyders do. Maybe other people do that, and that's kind of their thing, but as Snyders, we don't lie to each other. Another conversation we have with Brecken is we don't hit each other with sticks, but we'll get into that some other time. We need to set standards. We need to set expectations for our kids, and then we need to expect that our kids are going to succeed. We need to expect that our kids are going to succeed. And so the first key, give kids a strong sense of identity. Give kids identity. The second point for us this morning is this: give kids direction. We need to give kids direction. Kids want to know what's going on. They want to know where we are going. They want to know when they are going to get there. And if you question this, you go ahead and go on a road trip in my car with my kids when we're going somewhere. And once we get going a little ways out of town, two questions are on repeat. You know what they are, right? Where are we going, and are we there yet? Brecken and I went to Rendezvous this last weekend, and we were barely out of Cheyenne. And he's constantly asking, are we there yet? No, Brecken. Are we there yet? We get past the windmills. I don't know what they are, out east of town, west of town. Are we there yet? No, we're not there yet. Going past the Walmart distribution center. Are we there yet? No, we're not there yet. Shush. Kids want to know direction. They want to know where they are going. Look at Exodus chapter 13. God, at this point, has rescued Egypt from slavery, and they are wandering around right now in the wilderness. And it says this, verse 20 through 22, not verse 23. Verse 20 through 22 says, and they set out from Succoth and camped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness. And the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to lead them on their way during the day, and in a pillar of fire to give them light at night, so that they could travel by day or night. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night never left its place in front of the people. God took responsibility for guiding his people. God took responsibility for showing them the way, showing them the direction, and he never left his kids. He never left his people. He was always there with them. And the question for us as parents, as grandparents, as people who hang out with kids sometimes, wherever you land on that, is, are we doing this with our kids? Are we doing this with our kids? Because here's some truth. I've said it before, maybe you've heard it before as well, that we need to just constantly remember. It's from the time that a child is born until they turn 18 years old, there's 936 weeks. 936 weeks we get with a child from birth until 18 years old. Hannah is almost halfway through that. 936 weeks. What are you doing with those weeks? What are we doing with those weeks as parents, as grandparents, as people who are with kids? And then it's upsetting even further when you look at studies, and I found a study that said on average, kids spend 1,680 minutes a week in front of some kind of screen. 1,680 minutes a week in front of some type of screen. And if that doesn't make you feel bad enough, the study also goes on to say that the time parents are spending in meaningful conversation with their kids is about 3.5 minutes a week. What are we doing with the precious little time that we have with our kids? What are we doing with the precious little time we have with our kids? Because some people, the kind of common thing for parents right now is to have a screen raise their kid. You can find educational programs on TV. You can download learning apps on a screen, and you can give them a screen, you can give them a tablet, and you can let a screen raise your kid. And that's a popular thing right now. Some parents buy into the thought that teachers need to raise their kids. And once we can just send them off to school, then the school system can just raise our kids. Well, I can tell you what, I have friends who are teachers, and teachers are underpaid and overworked, and it only gets worse for them when they get kids that have not been raised by their parents. Some people think that it's a church's job to raise their kids. They can just send it to a children's ministry that meets for, an hour and 15 minutes on Sunday, or to a youth ministry for an hour a week, and that the church is going to raise their kids. And I think people have taken the phrase, it takes a village to raise a kid, to an unhealthy level. And I think at some level it does take a village to raise a kid, but I think we've taken that to a level to where parents just kind of say, well, it's not just my responsibility to raise my kid, it's the village's responsibility. Here's the reality. I think we need to ditch that a little bit, because I think it takes a parent realizing, embracing their God-given responsibility to raise their kids. Because God didn't give me 4 children in order to release them to a bunch of other people in order to raise. God gave me and Kimmy 4 kids for us to raise. And yes, the village helps. And it is important for other voices to speak into my kids' lives, but it is not their responsibility to raise my kid. It is my responsibility to raise my kid. And my responsibility alone. It's no one else's job or responsibility other than the parents to raise their kid. Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 1 and 2, and then jumping down to 17 through 21, God tells us what he expects us to do with our kids. Read this with me, verse 1 and 2. Therefore, love the Lord your God and always keep his mandates and statutes, ordinances, and commands. You must understand today that it is not your children who experienced or saw the discipline of the Lord your God. He's saying here at this moment, he's saying that it's not your children who saw the things that God did. It's not their children who saw the mighty works of God. This is not your children's responsibility to just get this idea on their own. It's your, as parents' responsibility to pass this on to your kids. And then he continues on in let's start in verse 18 through 21. It says, imprint these words of mine on your hearts and minds and bind them as a sign on your hands and let them be a symbol on your foreheads. And teach them to your children, talking about them when you sit in your house and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates, so that as long as the heavens are above the earth, your days and those of your children may be many in the land that the Lord swore to give your forefathers. Our kids have not seen, they have not heard what we have. They have not experienced what we have. They have not gone through what we have, but they need us to teach them. They need us to show them. They need us to help them. And how do we do that? Because the big question is, well, how do I pass on faith to my kids? And if I can oversimplify it a little bit from these verses, it's just live life with them and have conversations with them. I mean, this passage here talks about how you bind it on your house and you talk about it while you're walking along the road, and you talk about it when you sit down and you get up and when you're eating meals together. When you're going through life and you're living life and something comes up, talk about it. When you see something on TV, talk about it. When you interact with somebody around you, talk about it. When something happens in your family, talk about it and teach them and show them and talk to them what it means to follow God in this situation. Talk to them about God no matter what is going on around them. And so we give kids identity. We give kids direction. Third one is this. We give kids discipline. We need to give kids discipline. When it comes to discipline, I think we've all probably been here at one time or another. When it comes to discipline, everyone thinks they know the right answers. It's been said this way, that a perfect parent is a person with excellent child-rearing theories and no actual children. And we've all been there, right? Like my family, we have lots of kind of older kids. I mean, there's a wide range of about 15 or 20 years of kids. And so the older ones started having kids, and what did the younger ones start doing? Talking about how wrong the parenting of the older kids were, until they started getting kids and realizing how difficult it was. Everybody talks about parenting, and parenting is a lot easier to talk about than it is to actually do. Discipline is critical to raising kids. Discipline is critical to raising kids. After God freed the Israelites from Egypt, he laid out rules and expectations for them, and then what happened? They broke them. The rules get laid out, they sinned, and they spent 40 years in the desert. And then after the 40 years, God lays out the rules again, and we find ourselves now in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 1 and 2. It says this is the command, the statutes and the ordinances the Lord your God has instructed me to teach you, so that you may follow them in the land you are about to enter and possess. Do this so that you may fear the Lord your God all the days of your life by keeping all of his statutes and commands I am giving you, your son and your grandson, and so that you may have a long life. How do we give a long life to our kids? How do we give a long life to our kids? We give rules, we give expectations, we give clear boundaries, we give discipline. Even though they aren't saying it, kids crave boundaries. They crave expectations, and they test it. And it feels like they're just being rebellious by testing him. But when they test, they're really just trying to figure out where the line is, where the boundary is, because they don't quite understand. And they're asking you to show them where the line is. And so we give clear expectations. We give clear boundaries. And when those boundaries are crossed, when rebellion does happen, whatever it is, we give clear and caring consequences and discipline. And I struggle with this. Man, I struggle with this. We cannot be disciplining our kids just for being kids. And this is a struggle I have because so many times I want my kids to be perfect when in reality you cannot expect a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old to act like an adult. I think it's wrong to discipline kids for simply being kids. It's wrong to get upset and discipline a kid for accidentally spilling milk at the table. But it is not okay to not discipline when a kid is clearly rebelling against an expectation or a boundary that you have set. And when we discipline, we must discipline in love. It should be out of love, not out of abuse or out of anger. Everything we do in parenting should be in the context of love. And so we give kids identity, we give kids direction, we give kids discipline, and finally, we should give kids hope. We should give kids hope. There's a world out here that I think wants to scare our kids. I think there's a world out here that wants to scare us. We need to speak hope into the lives of our kids. We need to show them a world that you can live in without living in fear. There's more to the world out there than what is scaring us. Our kids need to know that God isn't dead. Our kids need to know that God is still real. They need to know that he is alive in our lives, in the lives of people around us. They need to know he's alive and he's at work. And they need to see and know that there is hope because God is real and because he's working and he's alive. And they need to know that God keeps his promises. Exodus chapter 3, verse 17. And I have promised you that I will bring you up from the misery of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. Exodus chapter 12, verse 25. And when you enter the land that the Lord will give you, as he promised, you are to observe this ritual. We need to know and we need to remind our kids that God keeps his promises, that he has kept his promises, and that he will keep his promises, and we have hope. And this life that we can live out here is not scary. We shouldn't live in fear, but we can live in hope and expectation because God is alive and he's working still. And so keys to raising kids, 4 of them, I know that you know many more as well, but 4 of them this morning. Give kids identity. Give kids direction. Give kids discipline. And give kids hope. And I want you to know, because this service doesn't necessarily see it like second service does all the time, but we love kids here. We love kids at North Christian, and we have a group of volunteers that are some of the most dedicated people that I know to serving and ministering to the next generation. They love kids, and there's a reason that they're working with kids. And they spend hours and hours every week pouring into lessons and preparation in order to minister to kids and point them towards Jesus. And this morning in both services, we're celebrating kids, and we're celebrating families as deep breath, as summer is coming to an end and we kind of get back into the routine of things. We're celebrating this morning, but what we're also going to do is we're going to pray, and we're going to pray hard for our kids and our families and for our teachers that are going back to school this next week. And so this morning, as we kind of bring this part of the service to a close, I'm going to ask that we just have a time of prayer, just where we are at. And then I will pray, and then we will continue on with our service this morning. But this morning, will you pray? Will you pray for people who are sitting around you? Will you pray for people who are coming to church second service? Will you pray for people who aren't here that have kids that are going to school, that have kids that are maybe homeschooled, that have kids that are maybe going to date, wherever they land? Will you pray for kids? Will you pray for parents as they're getting back into kind of a normal routine? Will you pray for teachers that are going back into classrooms to have daily one-on-one time with kids? Will you pray for everybody who is involved with kids? And maybe there's people that come to mind specifically. Maybe it's your own family. Maybe it's somebody close to you. But will you pray for people by name, and will you pray for them as we enter into this new season of the year this morning? Let's pray. God, I'm thankful for families, and I'm thankful for kids. I'm thankful for parents. Thankful for teachers. I'm thankful for people who dedicate their lives to spending time with kids and helping them learn and helping them grow in a number of different contexts. And Father, right now, we want to just take a special time to single them out and to pray for them. Father, I pray for teachers and paraprofessionals and administrators and moms who are homeschooling. And I just pray that you would be with them over these coming months as school year is starting to gear up again, and that the routine is coming and the difficulties that come with sometimes with teaching kids, rather at home or in a classroom, whatever that may be. God, I just pray that you would be with them. And for those teachers who follow you, and I just pray that you would be with them during this school year, and that you would allow them to not only teach from an educational standpoint, but also minister from a spiritual standpoint. Let them be a light in a world that is dark. Let them be somebody who speaks truth and hope and love into kids' lives where some of these kids don't get any of it at all. And for students, Father, I just pray, no matter what age they are, that as they're going back to school, that you would just give them a dedication, you'd give them a focus, but you would also just give them this desire to share you and to point people towards you as well. Let them be missionaries on a mission field that are going out and sharing you with friends around them. And Father, I just pray for those that are going to college, those that are, no matter where you land on the education field, that you would just be with these individuals going and doing these things. And Father, as parents, I just want to pray for them as well. Pray for parents and grandparents and anybody that is interacting with kids, that it wouldn't just be about raising them to be effective adults in this world, but it would be also, and really more importantly, about raising them to be good, strong Christian adults that love you, that follow you. And so, Father, help us as parents to do that. Give us the desire to point our kids towards you no matter what it takes. And Father, we look to you and we praise you. We look to you for the strength and the courage that it takes to step out and to do these things. It's in your Son Jesus' name that I pray. Amen.